Trade deadline day, always a massive event on the hockey calendar. But instead of sorting through all the deals today, because people have options for that, we're going to go down a different path as we will be joined by Pete DeBoer, fresh off his Olympic experience. And he's not working right now, so he's able to share some experiences of trade deadline day as a head coach.
By the way, I've heard as much stories about Pete DeBoer coming back to coach in the NHL as I heard players being traded. So,
really,
that's almost the second question you get asked is like where's Pete going, or is Pete going here, or Pete going there, as opposed to how many times did Robert Thomas get moved in the last 4 days? Mm. So from that perspective, it's He's one of those guys that every day goes by, he's in more demand than ever, I think. And I don't think there's any question that Pete DeBoer will be coaching an NHL team by next September. Do you?
No. I was a little surprised that he wasn't connected to Los Angeles, that they stayed internal on that. I kind of always had it in my head that would be a logical transition if the Kings did make a change.
But I think, this is, how many coaches are going to be changed over the summertime? And I think Pete's going to be able to pick and choose. And, with his resume, with almost 20 years of coaching in the National Hockey League, he's going to be in a position to be able to decide, okay, what's best for me, what's best for my family, what's the best team to take over. I think all those things are going to be a factor.
Yeah, being able to sit back and be a little bit more selective would be a luxury that not a lot of coaches have.
No, and I think that's what comes when you have success. I mean, let's face it. Here's a guy that went to the Western Conference Final 3 consecutive years, so that he has value. And it just so happens that the worm turned in Dallas, and now it's time to figure out where he goes next. He's in a better spot than ever before when you think about it, and probably comes back recharged, re-energized, and have had a chance to have enjoyed the Olympic experience as much as he could.
How much involvement is there between the head coach and what's happening at trade deadline day? We'll get into that with Pete DeBoer next on 100% Hockey on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, your podcast platform choice. It's 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon next.
NHL TV is now on DAZN. Hockey lives here.
Here we go.
Watch every game from every team. The best players in the world. And the coldest plays on ice. Watch up to 4 games at once for the ultimate NHL experience. Sign up now at DAZN.
I don't know how many years it's been, but this is the first time that you're with us watching the trade deadline. And so we're joined by Pete DeBoer on 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon. Are you just getting up, watching Twitter, watching the .com and the different shows?
Yeah, you know what? You're right. It's the first time I haven't been either sitting in a coaching room somewhere or, sitting in a war room going through this. So it's an interesting perspective, not having a dog in the fight, so to speak. You can really look at it from more of a fan perspective. And, so it's been interesting this year for sure.
Do you, we talk about players getting antsy this week. Do coaches get antsy too?
Oh, for sure. You know what? It's a big week. I've been on both sides of it. Thankfully, I haven't been on the sell side much. My first 3 years in the NHL, I was on the sell side every year. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I started in Florida the first year. Kind of an interesting trade deadline story. I'm a young coach, the Florida Panthers. Jacques Martin's our GM, and we get into the trade deadline. and we're right on the playoff bubble. And Jay Bouwmeester was pending UFA that summer, and it was pretty well known that he was going to leave. He wanted to leave Florida. He hadn't come out and said it, and there was no confirmation, but we all felt it. So the organization was in a spot where they hadn't made the playoffs in a long time. There was a lot of pressure to make the playoffs. So we keep Jay Bouwmeester for a playoff run, or do we trade him for assets? So that was my first year in the NHL. We ended up keeping him, tied for the last playoff spot, lost the tiebreaker to Montreal for the last playoff spot, and Jay Bouwmeester walked in free agency. So it was it was an epic, almost disaster on all fronts. But they're never easy. The next 2 years I was in Florida, we sold both years and bottomed out. And then honestly, every other year I've been in the league, we have either added or stood pat, because we've been in a spot where, we're either trying to make a run or get in the playoffs and make some noise. So I've been pretty fortunate the last kind of 15 years of my NHL career.
Leading up to the trade deadline, how much communication is there between your side and hockey operations side, general manager and company?
That always depends on the organization and who you're working with. So some no, it's like any business.
There's got to be a loose story coming here now, Peter. There's got to be a loose story.
It's like any business and any boss you work for. Everybody's has different type of communication. Skills and paths and really charts, how involved do they want the coaches? And, you'd be surprised. Lou is a very communicative GM, despite the reputation. We met, Lou met with his coaching staff on a regular basis every 10 games. We went through the entire roster our roster as a group, and then he had that giant legendary board in his office of every roster in the NHL, and then he would go through that with us. These are the teams that might fall out. These are the guys that might be available. He was very very communicative. So it's not the story you probably thought I was going to tell, John, but he despite his reputation, he was really good on that end. But you know what, I think, listen, I'm a little bit biased, but I think players know players because you play against them. And I think the next person that knows players the best are coaches. When you coach against a player especially in your conference or your division for years, or coach a player on your team, I think you have really intimate knowledge of that player. And when I look back, some of the best deadline deals that I was involved with really involved picking up players that I had either coached before or had a history before, or one of my assistants had a history before, because we knew that player. And some of the ones that haven't gone well, you have been the other end, where you don't know that player and you're kind of going in blind. There's no general rule on that. There's always exceptions to that, but that's been my history of it.
Conversely, how do you manage? I mean, and maybe this is just me. I always thought the coach is kind of like the man in the middle. You got your general manager on one side, and you got your 23 players on the other side. How do you manage messaging and discussions with your players when, face it, their names start to pop up? Yeah,
it's an uncomfortable week to 10 days. It really is, around the trade deadline on either end of it. Because if you're selling, guys know they're leaving for sure. And if you're buying, guys are on notice that someone's probably leaving for sure too. So, or your lineup's going to look different in the next week, and guys are going to get slotted differently than maybe they have up to that point. They're having a great year. They've been on the power play. You add two guys, now they're not on the power play anymore. So everyone is on edge. It's, it's a tense time for everybody. I will tell you, I think your dressing room is a key part of that. Your veterans are a key part of that. They've been through it before. They understand. They're the guys. Your leadership are the guys you rely on to keep the train on the track, so to speak, during that week and keep everybody focused. But there's definitely an underlying tension and current of uncomfortability in your room, regardless of what end of that you're on.
Would players ever come to you and say, have you heard anything? What's going on?
I think they go to you guys before they come to anybody. you guys know way before any of us know. I mean, honestly, we rely on social media, on the insiders, on the shows, on the podcasts. Listen, and you guys know, I mean, there's people in this business that's their job, is to dig up that information before it becomes public. So, and they're very good at it. So I think, the TVs are all tuned in all around the dressing room. And a lot of times, that's probably the most uncomfortable part. You're just crossing your fingers, hoping someone doesn't read about it before they actually get firm acknowledgement that something's happening.
There has to be, it's trying to put a finger in a dike, though, when you think about it, because there's always leaks, right? There's always things that happen. But do managers ever put out, listen, I don't want any stories. You're not talking to people. Try to avoid replying. I mean, I've heard the famous story that Lou said, if this gets out, the trade's off. Oh, yeah. Well, that would be as open as Lou was in his communication with the coaches at the trade deadline. There was a no communication outside that room, heavy ban on anybody that walked out. And trust me, he would find out if something leaked, and he would get to the bottom of it. I've seen the depths of investigation he'll go to if he thinks something's been leaked from the organization. So, I think that is real too, and it's hard because the hockey world's so connected now compared to when I came into the league 18 years ago. Between the number of guys that change teams and play with each other, the national teams that they play on, the guys they grow up with, how easy the communication is between players. I mean, it's constant team to team. I don't think you used to have that as much. So these players are talking all the time. And, if you're a GM on a team that's buying, you'd be crazy not to talk to your player who played with the guy that you're considering picking up, at least to get an opinion on them. And when that happens, and obviously that has a tendency to get out. Hey, my GM just asked about you. So I think you have to manage all those things.
How much would you advocate for yourself, for your lineup during the course of maybe a week to 2 months leading up to a deadline?
Well, I think as coaches, we're advocating all the time. I think that, and that's where coaches and managers differ, right? I mean, a coach is looking at winning coming out of this deadline tomorrow, in April, in May, and in the playoffs. A GM has to juggle all those balls of draft picks and futures and salary cap and what they can do. But it's definitely a keeping up with the Joneses type mindset in the coach's room. I mean, you're going into the deadline in a good spot, and you want to make sure that you're keeping up with everybody else as you exit the deadline. Regardless of whether that really matters. It's not necessarily the team that acquires the most at the deadline wins every year, but there's a history here. Listen, the Florida Panthers have gone all in the last 2-3 years, and they've won cups. The Vegas Golden Knights have gone all in, and they've won cups because of it. So, there is some history to having that all-in mindset.
Is there a blueprint to integrating new players? Do you have a system that says, okay, this has to happen, this has to happen? Again, where do you put the onus on when somebody new comes in?
You know what? It depends. If you've had a history with that player, I'll give you an example. Evgeny Dodonov, I had in Florida as a young player when we acquired him in Dallas. I knew how he would fit, where he would fit. And he came in and kind of was seamless. I think we got him in Vegas too when I was there. So I knew that player. So that was easy. We picked up Michael Granlund last year at the deadline. And I didn't know Michael Granlund as a player other than coaching against him. I always liked him, but I didn't know exactly what we were getting. And, he was absolutely fantastic in his integration into everything we were doing, from systems to team play. Now, he had a history with the Finnish group of players that we had in Dallas there, and I think that was helpful. But also he was just a much more versatile and better player than I even imagined. On the flip side, there's other scenarios over the years where you get a guy and, it's a disappointing fit. It just doesn't work. You have it, penciled in on a piece of paper. Hey, this guy should fit well with this guy. This guy should help us with these situations, special teams, whatever. And he comes in and it just doesn't work. And that's real too. So I think, again, the more knowledge you have about the fit, from the people that are making that decision, the better chance you have of it working.
Talking trade deadline with Pete DeBoer. We'll take a break. We'll come back with John Shannon with the first question as we continue on 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon.
Car shopping should be exciting, not exhausting. That's where Car Gurus comes in. They have advanced search tools, unbiased deal ratings, and price history, so you know a great deal when you see one. It's no wonder that Car Gurus is the #1 rated car shopping app in Canada. When you're car shopping on your phone, it shouldn't be a maze. You need to see all the information. With the Car Gurus app, you can. Powerful search tools that you see deal ratings, price history, and dealer reviews on listings all in one place. And you can turn on real-time price drop alerts so you never miss a great deal. Car Gurus connects you with trusted dealerships when you're ready, ensuring a transparent, hassle-free buying process. Buy your next car today at cargurus.ca. Make sure your deal is the best deal. That's cargurus.ca. cargurus.ca.
Sorry, John. Continue.
Ability, chemistry, culture. Rate those when you trade for a player.
Oh, I think culture first. He has to fit. I think if you're trading for a player at the deadline, you're obviously having a good year, and the last thing you want to do is disrupt that dressing room. Now I would say, there's very few guys that in today's game that you would put on that list of guys that would walk in your room and absolutely have the potential to turn it upside down. But the culture fit and how he's going to fit is really important. And then I think you're looking for a particular skill set, and it's not necessarily always talent. Sometimes it's hey, we need faceoffs. We need to be able to win a faceoff in the last minute of a game, or on a penalty killer, or some toughness in your lineup, or a fourth line guy that complements. So, I wouldn't say when we say talent, it's not sheer talent. I think it would be the talent of what you're looking for in those intangibles. Sometimes it's a power play guy and it's the most talented guy, but a lot of times you're filling needs and of areas that you think that you maybe are lacking a little bit, and some of the things that win in the playoffs. Listen, we can fight it all we want, but playoff hockey, there's a heaviness and a physicality and a premium on those things and things like face-offs and blocking shots that there isn't during the regular season that comes into play at the deadline.
Why do you think it's been difficult for goaltenders to have success in deadline deals?
That's a good question. Well, let me ask you this. Who is the last goaltender that went at the deadline?
Well, high profile, I always go back to Ryan Miller. And that's a few years ago now. But,
man, we're dating ourselves.
We are. And in high school, that was the only option I had.
Yeah. You know what? Well, I mean, listen, when we were in Vegas, we brought in Robin Leonard, right? It wasn't a deadline deal, but it was kind of I guess it was because it was the COVID year. It was close to a deadline deal. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of any other big goaltenders that have moved, at that time. I think it's funny, but it's the most important position come playoff time. And you're right. When you start looking at the names that have moved at this time of year, there's very few. And I think that's probably because if you have a premium goaltender, if you have a starting goaltender, someone that can make that difference, you're not trading them. Even if you're a team that's rebuilding, you're probably not trading them. I mean, I look last year, Colorado redid their whole goaltending situation during the year with Blackwood and Wedgwood, and we beat them in 7 games in the second round, but it definitely gave them a bump. And, I think those guys will be more comfortable this year, and we'll see if that pays dividends for them. But I would say their goaltending is definitely in a better place than it was prior to them making those changes. But I think the high profile starting goalies just don't move. If you've got one, you're not trading them.
Mm-hmm. Hey, have you come down from the Olympic high yet?
high and low. You know what?
Yeah. But I mean, the experience alone, right?
The experience was one of the highs and one of the privileges of my coaching career. It was absolutely amazing. I filled Daren in a little bit when I got back. I went over a week early. I lived in the Olympic Village for a week before the team got there, and was around all the athletes preparing for all their events, the figure skaters, the speed skaters, the women's hockey team. And then got to walk in the opening ceremonies, which was something that was an absolute life moment that I'll never forget. And then the team showed up, and then it's a real hockey tournament, and you're rolling up your sleeves and you're digging in and you're working with the best players in the world and the best coaches in the world. So it was an awesome experience. I'm really proud of our group, how we built our game through the Olympics. We played our best game in the gold medal game by far, which is all you can really ask. It's never perfect. Would we have liked to score another goal? For sure. But I think the expected goals were 2-1 for us. We played a great gold medal hockey game, and they found a way to win. So you have to give them credit for that. But when you have perspective of stepping away from it for a week or 10 days, like I have now, I think you start to appreciate everything that went on, and also, how hard those guys played, and they were devastated as much as every Canadian was by not winning.
Hindsight is certainly 2020. I've got to ask you though, 3-on-3 hockey with a gold medal on the line, do you play it differently now than 3-on-3 when it's a single point? It's a good question. I don't think so. I mean, tactically, you don't play it any different. Are you talking personnel deployment? I honestly, a little bit of both. I mean, in the NHL game, you're hell-bent. You're hell-bent. Yeah. You can go for it. Particularly if it's East versus West. You can go for it. Yeah, it's only a point. Yeah. But is there more cautious coaching and thought process when it's for a gold medal?
Yeah. I don't think so. I honestly think, John, that might be the worst thing you could do in that moment. You got to go for it. You get one chance. I mean, how do you sleep at night if all of a sudden you start over coaching and we're backing off and playing cautious and we've been on our toes all night. We've been tilting the ice all night. Hey, let's go win this thing. I understand the question, but when you're in that moment, I think to shift the mindset of your group to, oh boy, we better watch out here. We better slow down. We better back off. It'd be hard to sleep at night. I know we lost, but I know we lost, on our toes, going to win a gold medal, and I can sleep at night with that.
Well, it's hard to argue McDavid, McCarr, McKinnon as your first line. So
but you guys will. Somebody out there will, I'm sure.
You obviously didn't come home right away.
No, I didn't.
Have you watched the gold medal game?
On purpose.
Have you watched the gold medal game?
I haven't. No, I haven't. No,
because normally you every other game you would look back, but there's no reason to dive into that right now. No, and you know what? I don't know. I don't know when I will. I'm sure at some point I will, but I think it's still a little bit raw.
So you talked about social media. You talked about the job of the media and all this. Let's be honest. You're right now. Your name is out there a lot. Your name's out there a lot. How do you? And I'm not asking whether you got a job or not, because that's not fair. But how do you manage now that your name is at the top of a lot of those lists that are created? Who's the next coach coming back? Yeah.
You know what? Honestly, I don't spend a lot of time on that. Some of it is right from left field. I'll give you an example. The Craig Berube thing early in the season, like there was zero truth to that. And I wanted to make sure that the record was straight on that with Craig. And, but it's an unfortunate part of the business that we're in, that the guys that are working this time of year and through July are, we're all on the firing line, and that's just the reality of it. There's 10 to 12 of us every year that get turned over almost like clockwork for the last 5, 6, 7 years. So that's a reality we live in. And if you're on the other side of that, which I have been for the first time, it's just as uncomfortable because, listen, it's not in your human nature to, hope people fail or, wait for bad things to happen. I don't like to live my life doing that. So, I'm not watching the TV, tuning into the games of the teams that are struggling, hoping they lose so a job opens up. I mean, listen, if I was a young coach trying to break in, maybe I would be, but I'm not at that point in my career. I don't wish that on anyone. I've been on that end of it, so I know how tough that is. So I don't wish that on anyone. So I'm just, the Olympic experience was awesome for me. I got to work with the best coaches in the world, coaching against some of the best coaches in the world. I came away a better coach because of it. I'm a better coach now than I was, the last 6 or 7 years. I went to the conference finals or the 2 Stanley Cup finals. And, so my professional development and getting better at what I do is something I've kind of used my time for more than worrying about, what's next or what jobs are opening up.
You do. So what will you do between now and when the phone rings?
Oh, well, I'm talking to you guys. I'm going to hit the gym today. I'll watch the trade deadline. My son's playing college hockey, so they're in the playoffs. I'm going to fly in and watch some of his playoff games. And honestly, I'm just trying to enjoy day-to-day life. I mean, I I want to work again. I am going to work again. And I also know after 18 years in the league that work is all consuming. And once you jump into it, there's not a lot of time for anything else. So I'm really trying to enjoy the time for everything else, until I don't have that time anymore.
Will you work at the World Championships for Canada?
No, I'm not.
No?
Misha Donskoff's going to go this year. He's going to be the head coach for Canada. And you know what? Misha's a great story. He was my assistant in Vegas, brought him to Dallas. He's my assistant in Dallas. It's his first opportunity to be a head coach and run a team. I'm so excited for him. I'm going to help as much as I can behind the scenes. But this is his show and his coming out party as a head coach. And I'm going to be a supportive observer in the background.
Two follow-ups on something that we've touched on. You mentioned being a better coach now. What is there an element that you've really noticed that you'd like to latch onto from the Four Nations and the Olympics from working with everybody?
I think all kinds of things, Daren. I think you take any time. I've talked about this before, and for all young coaches out there working, the best thing I ever did was get involved with Hockey Canada as a young coach, because there are coaching clinics you can go to in the summer, but it's a weekend here, a weekend there. When you go and work for a national team or and this is the US and Canada or Europe, you're getting in a room with all kinds of different people, and you can learn not just from the coaches but the managers too. I mean, we had 5 elite managers in that room. That management group with the Olympics was Doug Armstrong and Jim Nill, Brisebois, Sweeney, Ryan Getzlaff was there, so I mean you're picking all those guys' brains, never mind the coaching staff and Coop and Talk and Butch and Misha and everybody else. So I think you get a chance. That's your chance to really learn from everybody, and you can take things from everybody in those situations that you like. That you would implement. So the lessons are wide reaching. I think at the end of the day, you got to stick to your core. You can't try and be somebody that you're not, but there's always things that you can add to your arsenal, your coaching arsenal, both from, communication and people skills, but also from technically on the ice, drills, how will you run things, systems, there's all kinds of things you learn in those situations.
And on trade deadline day, morning skates, you ever had a player called off?
You know what? I believe I have. I'm trying to remember exactly, the craziest,
because we're always looking over at the equipment guys on the bench for them to give a signal like, hey.
You know what? It's funny, but my most memorable trade deadline day for that situation was actually in junior hockey. I was coaching in the OHL. I was coaching the Plymouth Whalers. We were playing the Windsor Spitfires, and trade deadline day fell on the same day as we were playing each other in Windsor. And I believe the trade deadline time was like 6 p.m. It was right around warm-up time. So everybody was on the ice skating around in warm-up, but we literally did a 3-for-3 trade at the deadline. So 3 guys from Windsor and 3 guys from our team had to go and swap jerseys. It was something like that. It was crazy. Guys were changing dressing rooms, changing jerseys before the game. So that's probably the craziest one at the NHL level. Listen, I over 18 years, I've been in the air at trade deadline time, flying somewhere. We've been on the ice for pregame skate. We've been at practice, all kinds of different situations. But, nothing matched that. That was right out of a movie.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, always a pleasure, guys.
Get to chill out a little bit to enjoy life a little bit.
Hit the ball straight, Pete. Just hit the ball straight. That's the key.
Straighter than Millard, John.
Yeah.
Straighter than Millard.
Wow. Hey, come on now.
Exactly.
I hit it okay from a straightness standpoint. I just don't hit it very long, and I have some equipment liabilities. Let's say that. Thanks, Pete. We'll be back with more on 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon.
With the NHL app, you can listen to every NHL game right from your phone. And with home and away broadcast feeds, you choose your way to listen.
And he scores!
Whether you're at work, at the gym, or stuck in traffic, the NHL app puts you right in the action all season long. Every team, every game, everywhere you go. Download the NHL app and never miss a moment.
I like that question about Lou when you brought up Lou sharing things.
Well, you know, the famous story was when Lou was in Toronto, and Lou might get mad at me for telling this story, but he had his senior guys around the table, and you know, and Lou's set in his ways, and he does build consensus most of the time, but he went around the table, should we trade for Thomas Plekanec? Should we trade for Thomas Plekanec? And he went around the table and got 8 or 9 no's. Within 24 hours, they traded for Thomas Plekanec. So that's, in many ways, that's, if Lou gets it in his mind that that's what he needs, then that's what he needs. But I mean, I have a tremendous admiration for Lou Lamoriello, and I think that Lou's image that has out there, his public persona, is exactly what Lou wants to project, and is nowhere near the kind and gentle and professional person that Lou Lamoriello is. So that's why I think everybody who is around Lou for any time, like Pete was in New Jersey, always has a smile on their face when people talk about, wow, was Lou, you know, what was going on with Lou? So, and Lou would love a day like today. This is the first time in a long time Lou has not been involved in trade deadline day. You know, it's a long time coming for Lou Lamoriello.
Still texting people, not asking for what's going on. He's probably telling them, hey, you know what you should be doing?
No, I don't think so. That's not Lou. That's not Lou. So I don't know. When this all ends, are we going to talk about this is the year of the defenseman or the year of the second line center?
I think second line center has been the theme all year long around the National Hockey League.
Mind you, you know, when you see guys like John Carlson move, you know, that's a surprise. You have to wonder. I guess the Caps are rethinking what's going on with the future of the franchise, right?
Well, I didn't see Washington selling off being that close to a playoff spot.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe they can still compete. You know, that's the other thing is that some of us who are on the outside, we don't understand the depth of these teams and how many, if there's a young prospect that can come up and make a difference right away. This is a day where, you know, your pro scouting department is such a factor, and you can be able to sit down and ask for some advice on what do we need, how do we need it. And let's face it, even the amateur guys that can weigh in on what's the draft like or what's this prospect like. So it's a big day, Daren. I'm with you. I don't think we should have games on this day because it's difficult to focus on everything that's going on at the same time.
Well, on the Capital side of it, if it is Alexander Ovechkin's last year, it's kind of a letdown if they go out that way.
Yeah, I haven't heard that though. I mean, I haven't heard that.
Lots of rumblings.
Yeah.
No, not officially. Not officially at all.
Right. And I think anything that Ovechkin does wouldn't surprise. If he wants to walk away, great. If he wants to play another year, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if he plays another year either. So just like Sid. Sid will play again. Right. So
I didn't hear Ovi's name in any conversations about being.
Oh no! They're not. Okay, you should go now.
No, because Sid's name has been up for a long time. Like, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? What's he going to do? But Ovi's name never comes up. Isn't it weird?
Yes, it is a little strange when you think about it and what value they have to the teams that they played for so long and how long they've been rivals in the same division. Yeah, it is kind of strange. Mind you, we always try to connect the dots with guys from the same town, right?
Right.
You know, when well, he's going to go play with Nate. He and his buddy Nate. And they need another center in Denver. Well, they don't now. They've got lots of centers.
Hit that like button, smash that like button over on YouTube. Send your comments. We love getting the interactions from all of our viewers and our listeners on your various podcast platform. Enjoy the weekend, and when we talk to you again, we'll be able to just focus on the stretch drive, John. Imagine that.
Playoffs are not that far away.
Nope.
Playoffs are not that far away.
Heading down that path on 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon.